Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump has threatened escalating tariffs on key European allies unless the US is allowed to buy Greenland. Duties would start at 10% on February 1st and rise to 25% by June. European leaders have rejected the demand, warning it could damage NATO unity, derail trade deals, and deepen transatlantic tensions. Syrian government forces have advanced into Kurdish-held areas near the Euphrates, taking Tapka and key dams despite US calls to stop. Kurdish-led SDF has accused the army of violating a withdrawal deal and warned it would fight to hold remaining towns and oil fields. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has accused President Trump of fueling deadly protests that have killed over 3,000 people. Khamenei has called Trump a criminal, while Iran blamed the unrest on US and Israel interference amid mass arrests and internet shutdowns. EU and Mercosur leaders have signed the landmark free trade agreement in Paraguay after 25 years of negotiations, paving the way for what would become the EU's largest ever trade deal. The accord covers the EU with Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, but still requires approval from the European Parliament. New York City Mayor Mamdani has appointed Tricia Shimamura as the city's new Parks Department Commissioner, tasking her with managing more than 30,000 acres of land. Mamdani has praised Shimamura's decade-long record of public service, while Shimamura has called the role an honor and vowed to make a difference. According to official results reported by Ugandan media, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni won a seventh term with 71.65% of the vote, defeating opposition challenger Bobi Wine, who won 24.72%. Wine is expected to reject the outcome, alleging an unfair election marred by an internet shutdown, and tensions remain high following protests and security crackdowns. According to IMF statements, the International Monetary Fund has approved a $261 million disbursement for Ethiopia after completing the fourth review of its 48-month extended credit facility, bringing total IMF support under the program to just over $2.18 billion. Elon Musk is demanding up to $134 billion from OpenAI and Microsoft, claiming they profited from his early funding and support. The companies call the claim baseless as the case heads to trial in April. Now for this hour, we start with US President. US President Donald Trump has vowed to implement a wave of increasing tariffs on European allies until the United States is allowed to buy Greenland, escalating a row over the future of Denmark's vast Arctic island. In a post on Truth Social, Trump has said additional 10% import tariffs would take effect on February 1st on goods from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Finland, and Great Britain, all already subject to tariffs imposed by Trump. Meanwhile, Greenlandic Minister Naja Nathanielsen has praised the reaction of European countries targeted by Trump's new tariff threats, which many European leaders have condemned as unacceptable. Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen has also stated that Trump's tariff threat comes as a surprise. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Matthew Wadham. He's an American journalist and author, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Wadham, for joining us once again. Good to see you.
Sure, hi.
Hi. Now looking at this, how significant is this the threat that's issued by Trump, and what do you think the outcome would be? How do you think European countries are going to be defensive, maybe giving reactions about this?
Well, President Trump is certainly using a big stick as the saying goes, to get other countries to fall into line. He is saying that if the European countries don't agree with an American acquisition of Greenland, that he is going to put a 10% tariff on them, and then a few months later, I think the tariff would go up to 25%. If by that point the United States has not taken over Greenland. So this is a really harsh way to negotiate, and I'm quite surprised that he's taking this tack. He really wants to have Greenland, and I'm not sure why he feels that the U.S. needs to have sovereignty over it, because the Denmark and the United States already signed a treaty, I think in the 1950s, saying that Denmark would retain sovereignty over Greenland, but the United States would be responsible for military affairs, for defending Greenland. So, which entails the U.S. being allowed to send the U.S. military there. So I'm not sure why he feels he needs to own. The United States needs to own Greenland outright, but he is a real estate developer, and it would be the biggest land acquisition in American history, bigger than the Louisiana Purchase and bigger than the purchase of Alaska, if he were to succeed. So maybe he is thinking of posterity, and he wants to go in the history books. But I don't think it is really actually necessary for the United States to have sovereignty over Greenland in order for him to accomplish his objectives, but he seems to think it is.
Right. And building on that, Mr. Vadam, some of our guests argue that instead of acquiring Greenland as an Arctic territory over security threat, they should make more investments and take care and protect Alaska instead. What's your take on that?
Well, that's an argument, but I think Alaska is already, as far as I know, Alaska is already pretty well defended by the United States. So, the United States could respond to a military threat if needed, but that is an interesting point of view. I don't really have any strong feelings on that. The U.S. defends its territory, so I'm not sure how much more it needs to put into Alaska in order to do that. Yeah. I think it's doing the job already.
And lastly, Mr. Vadam, how effective do you think these threats by Trump would be? And do you think he will be able to put a price tag on Greenland as well?
He probably will offer, there will be a price tag at some point. I don't think he can take it by force. Although the United States would defeat European Union countries' forces if it turned into an actual war. I think the United States would crush them, but I don't think that would be good for the United States or good for Europe, or definitely not good for the NATO alliance, which would disintegrate over such a thing. So if he wants Greenland, offering cash for it seems like the best way to go about it. But right now things are pretty uncertain, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. The Europeans, there was a leader in Germany who said, or not in Germany, but one of the other countries in Northern Europe, maybe Belgium, who said that if the United States goes through with a military takeover of Greenland, that European countries would seize U.S. military bases in Europe. And I think that threat is a real one. So I think in the end, Trump doesn't want to open up a can of worms like that, and start a war beyond Greenland over his desire to take over Greenland.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Vadam, for joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back. Thank you. Now, moving on to Iran, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has directly blamed US President Donald Trump for steering the deadly protests that have rocked the country in recent weeks. The protests, which first erupted on December 28th due to economic hardships, have turned into mass demonstrations calling for the end of clerical rule in Iran. Rights groups have reported that the violent crackdown by security forces has claimed the lives of thousands. Moreover, US President Donald Trump had made several threats of intervention, including vowing strong action if Iran executed protesters. However, in a social media post on January 16, he thanked Iran's leaders for canceling the mass executions, which the Iranian government denied were ever planned. Iran's leadership, on the other hand, has blamed the violence on armed rioters, describing them as terrorists and further accusing the US and Israel of stirring up the unrest. Let's in fact listen from the Supreme Leader himself.
جمهور آمریکا رو مجرم می‌دانیم، هم به خاطر تلفات، هم به خاطر خسارات، هم به خاطر تهمتی که به ملت ایران زد. ماهیت فتنه این فتنه آمریکایی بود، واضح بود. آمریکایی‌ها برنامه‌ریزی کردن، فعالیت کردن. هدف آمریکا هم اینو من قاطع صریح با تجربه 40 و چند ساله در جمهوری اسلامی عرض میکنم، هدف آمریکا بلعیدن ایران.
Now we stay on Middle East. The Trump administration is reportedly pushing for countries to pay $1 billion fee to join President Donald Trump's so-called Board of Peace. According to media reports, the draft charter that says that Trump would serve as the board's inaugural chairman. Moreover, the membership for each country is limited to 3-year terms and is only renewable at the discretion of the chairman. However, the White House has denied the report, calling it misleading and clearly asserting that there is no required membership fee to join the board. Instead, the White House claims that countries would earn permanent membership based on their commitment to peace and security. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Matthew Radham. He's an author and journalist, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Radham, for staying with us. Now, where is these accusations or, conspiracy coming in from? What do you think of and although the Trump administration has denied those?
The Trump administration has denied that countries will have to pay $1 billion to join this Board of Peace.
Yes, and 3-year term.
Right. Well, he denied it, so we don't know what the truth is just yet. Perhaps the truth will emerge in the next few days. You can't put a lot of stock necessarily in anonymous reports. However, I suspect that Trump doesn't like the idea of the United States having to pay out of pocket for everything in the world, and he likes the idea of other countries having to share some of the financial burden with the United States. And in that view, wanting the board to be funded by the member countries, I guess it makes sense. $1 billion sounds like a crazy, ridiculously high amount to you and me, but it isn't for major countries. Maybe he's looking at the nonprofit model that's used in the United States. I was part of the nonprofit sector for more than a decade, and in it, nonprofits often invite large donors to be members of their board of directors or board of trustees. So maybe he's thinking of that. I don't think if the $1 billion fee membership rumor happens to be true, that he's trying to enrich the United States. This peace board, or whatever it ends up being formally called in the end, is going to have some expenses. It's going to have to fund its operations, and it's not really clear how extensive those operations are going to be. Is it going to be like a little miniature United Nations that just has a mission to bring peace to the world? It's not really clear just yet. So, the idea of the $1 billion fee sounds kind of wacky in the beginning, but maybe it's not, and we'll have to wait to see first off if the rumor is true, and if it is true, then what the justification for the fee is, and then the member countries would have to decide if they actually want to, if it matters enough to them that they actually want to pay it.
And what do we know so far about this, like you mentioned, the mini United Nations? What do we know so far
Right.
about this?
We don't know a lot about it because
Yeah.
we just have basically, we have a lot of news reports citing anonymous sources, but I think it's based on the Gaza Board of Peace, but he wants he wants it to have an expanded mission, and he's hoping that his foreign policy successes, tentative though they are in Gaza, are going to, and in other places where they're less tentative, that it's going to inspire these countries to want to participate in this Board of Peace. So, a lot of these details are really fuzzy, kind of nebulous at this point, and so it's really hard to talk about what shape this Board of Peace is actually going to take.
Right. And do we know, although a lot of things are still under the wraps, do we know which countries are willing to join, or which countries will be joining so far, or at least people?
Well, we just have reports that that Turkey may be interested. It's not certain, but I think Canada and Argentina have reportedly accepted invitations to join this President Trump's Board of Peace. So there's been some interest so far, and we'll have to wait and see if other countries express interest in joining it. I'm not, based on what little we know about it so far, I'm really not comfortable, expressing an opinion on whether it's a good idea or not.
Yes, 100%. And do you think that, as Peace Board is being made right now, and like you mentioned, there's still a lot of things under the wraps. What do you think about the phase 2? How do you think this will be affecting the implementation of phase 2 of the ceasefire plan in Gaza?
I don't know that it's going to affect it at all. Phase 2 is about disarming Hamas and setting up this transitional authority, this technocratic authority, this board of experts and so on, technocrats, to govern Gaza. So I don't think that these two efforts are moving in opposite directions. So I don't see how it would be a hindrance to to what the United States is hoping to achieve in Gaza.
And do you think that there could be any disagreements between Israel, U.S., and some countries who will be, pushing for part 2 of this ceasefire right now?
But there already is disagreement. There's disagreement. Israel, did they ever get that last body back that they were hoping for?
No.
I haven't paid attention for the last few days, but look, that body is still outstanding, and they claim that means that Hamas, that the Gazans are in default of the first phase of the peace plan, and then the Gazans, the Palestinians, claim that Israel still has troops in Gaza, which also I think is not supposed to be happening under phase 1 of the Gaza peace plan. So there are already disagreements, and anything having to do with the Middle East is always messy, and it's one step forward and then 2 steps back, and I don't think these disagreements between Israel and Gaza and Hamas are just going to magically evaporate because President Trump suddenly has decided he wants to create an international board of peace.
Yeah, 100%. So, do you think that President Trump understands the the fact that no one has been successful in decades in mediating between Gaza and Palestine and Israel, and so many things have been decided, and like you mentioned, one step ahead and then two steps back with this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think President Trump probably appreciates the fact that he's operating in really rough, uncertain terrain. But he is, stubborn. Some would say pig-headed, and he is trying to accomplish it anyway because he thinks that he's a peacemaker, that he's a master deal maker, and that he thinks that he can negotiate anything. And he was successful in his first term with the Abraham Accords, which was a major foreign policy success for the United States. Got a lot of countries, Arab countries that were hostile to Israel, to suddenly be friendly to Israel, or at least be neutral towards Israel. So, I think he's hoping to build on the success of his past achievements, such as the Abraham Accords. So, this isn't coming out of nowhere. He's trying to build on what he's already done.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Matthew Adam for joining us today and sharing that deep insight with us on NewsX World. Now we move to South America. Guatemalan security forces are working to take back control of 3 prisons after rioting inmates took at least 46 people hostage. The officials are blaming the incident on gang members demanding greater privileges. According to Interior Minister Marco Antonio Villeda, there are no reported deaths or injuries among the hostages, and the hostages are mostly guards, but also include psychologists. As per prison officials, prisoners coordinated riots at 3 prisons, which he alleged were organized by the Barrio 18 gang, which was rioting because its leader is seeking transfer to another facility to gain better conditions and special treatment. Now we moved on to our tech news. Elon Musk is seeking up to $134 billion from OpenAI and Microsoft, claiming that they benefited unfairly from his early support. In a federal court filing, Musk says OpenAI gained as much as $109 billion, while Microsoft gained up to $25 billion, tied to his role as a co-founder and early backer. Musk said he provided most of the seed funding, key contacts, and credibility. OpenAI calls the demand unserious and part of a harassment campaign. Microsoft denies any wrongdoing. A jury trial is set to begin in April in California. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.